Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the MSMF Client Podcast. It is June. We skipped right past May. I don't know how that happened, fellas. But here we are in June, trying to get caught current. I am joined today by Mr. Cody Redding. Cody?
Well, good afternoon.
How are we doing?
I'm doing great.
The growing family as well?
I think we're stopped at 3 girls now.
He thinks. He does have quite a wine collection, which makes me worried. Mr. Rehkemper, Kraig, how are you?
All right. What's going on?
You're growing family, right?
Yeah. 2 little ones. Yep.
Excellent. So it's June, so school's out for summer.
It is.
And what I thought we could do, since the two of you have significant college funding needs, we're going to talk a little bit today about the process, the plan for college funding. And I would urge our clients, many of whom are grandparents, this is great information for you. So even though you may have done your part and helped your kids get through college or trade school or what have you, there still is things to learn here for your grandkids, as well as those of you who are in the college planning years. We're going to cover a wide variety of topics, but we're really going to kind of break it down by first our philosophy, which is what we call shared responsibility, which I'll talk through. Then I'm going to ask you guys to talk about some things that you have done with clients relative to parent contributions. We're going to talk a little bit through student contributions and then some alternative strategies. Sound good?
Perfect.
Good.
You're already, there's tears coming down your eyes when I say parent contributions. So let's first start with our philosophy, I think, as a firm, which I believe is a solid one because of the cost associated with college today.
Yeah.
Right. So my two graces is going to go back next year for grad school, and it's eye-popping in terms of what these schools charge. And we have always said, really, we think the way that our clients should approach it is a shared responsibility. Get the student's head in the game. That it's a strategy and a plan of attack with their parents. It's not just their parents writing some big fat check to make it get done. And what we found is when the student graduates and it's a shared responsibility, their level of knowledge and respect for money is far greater than if the parents just write the check. Right. And I was reminding you guys of the story, which I'll tell real quick and I'll make sure Rosie gets this podcast. When Rosie was first looking at schools and we started talking about what they cost and all those things, which my eyes popped out of my head, I said to her, well, Rosie, what are we going to do? How are we going to handle your portion, your contribution to this? And so her eyes got kind of wide and she's like, what are you talking about? I said, well, yeah, you're going to have some skin in the game on this deal. We're doing this together. This is not just me. And she was literally like a cartoon. She scratched the back of her head. And I said, well, what's wrong? And she said, well, I'm confused. I said, well, honey, let Dad unconfuse you. She goes, why? I thought you were successful. So I knew I had it right there, right? I said, well, some days of the year I feel successful, a lot of them, but I said, this just really isn't one of them today. So we worked through what her contributions were going to be, and you guys are going to talk about that. But I will tell you, when she graduated, she had a much greater respect for money than if I would have just been writing fat checks. So the shared responsibility, really, you're setting your child up for a successful relationship with money and be way ahead of their peers when they graduate. So with that as a backdrop, let's dive into, if you guys are okay with it, talking about parent contributions. And Kraig, I'm going to start with you. Let's start with some of the traditional ones that I think a lot of our clients are familiar with or are considering or have even used in the past, and ones that grandparents even need to be reminded of for their grandkids. So when I say parent contributions, what are the couple things that come to your mind?
Yeah, so the most popular one is probably the 529 college savings plan. And so that's the account where any contributions you make, you invest them and they grow tax deferred. If you use those withdrawals for education expenses, the growth is tax-free.
Tax-free.
Doesn't happen very often.
Those words don't show up next to each other very often.
So you don't get a federal deduction with your contributions, but in Missouri you do get a state deduction up to $16,000. There are gifting limits that do come into play. We can talk through those at that time, but it is a great option for families, especially if you start them young. You get a lot of growth with the market over those years to help fund a portion of those college expenses. Another option are UGMA or UTMA accounts. Those are accounts. One caveat on that, it does go on the count as a student asset when looking at FAFSA, but that is another option for students to cover a portion of their shared responsibility. The third option are Roth IRAs. So if you need a funding option, you can withdraw from a Roth IRA. If it is used for education expenses, there is no penalty. The 10% penalty is waived. Just remember that once you pull out of that account, you cannot put it back in.
So is there a difference in a Roth if you take that approach, Kraig, to use a portion of that for funding? Is there a difference between your contributions to the Roth and the earnings in it? Are they treated differently?
Yeah, so if you pull out your contributions to it, you can pull out your contributions at any time for a Roth. If you use them for qualified education expenses, you also get the earnings on top of that, can be pulled tax-free and penalty-free.
Super. Wow. Okay. So those a couple very solid traditional options, and I think, Cody, as I toss it over to you, what you guys, I see you guys doing with your clients is
So
correction.
the earning.
Hey, did you see the light?
I just realized
went off.
the earnings are not tax-free.
Correct.
But the contribution is, but not the earnings.
Yeah, thank you. In the Roth.
Yeah,
For the
in the
Roth.
Roth.
Yes.
That was good.
Yeah. I was like, wait, something didn't click.
Excellent. Excellent. Okay. So, again, as I toss to you, Cody, I think those are some great traditional options. There's some what I'll call non-traditional, but we've used in this firm. And I will say, before you dive into these, most of the time that I've seen you guys work with the firm's clients, it's normally a combination of these options. It's not all or one, so you can have multiple options and layers in terms of how you're pulling money. But what are some non-traditional options that you've used in the past?
Yeah, probably the biggest one that I think is not utilized maybe enough would be cash value life insurance on your child. So basically juvenile insurance is what they would call it. Basically after 6 months to a year or so of the child being born, you can get cash value life insurance issued on your child. It's there always has to be a leverage with it, but the cool part about it is that the cost of insurance internally is really inexpensive.
Next to nothing, right?
Right, next to nothing. And the great thing about cash value life insurance is that it lets you essentially accrue that account over a period of time without having to pay any taxes on it.
Right,
and then when it gets time to, especially if it's on the child and it gets time to where they need to access it maybe to help pay for college, you can take loans against it. You can pull out your premiums put in, tax free because they're the premiums put in. And obviously the best part about it is not included on the FAFSA.
Right.
So utilize probably the least amount just because you have to have the extra cash flow to be able to support it. Right. But starting early makes a huge difference with being able to accrue that cash value in there.
Well, and I guess before we jump on, it's a kind of self-completing. If something were to happen to, if you use the parent as the insured, yes, the internal cost is going to be higher, but if something happens to them, then it's kind of, you got the cash, just go to college.
The tax-free death benefit.
It's very attractive to use the child as the insured because the cost of insurance, your premium dollars go in and grow a lot faster because there's very little cost of insurance, but you can look at either way.
Correct.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah, it's great to utilize, you have to have the cash flow.
Got to have the cash flow. Very flexible tool, but you got to have free cash flow.
One that's actually utilized quite a bit, and setting up 529 grandparents making the contributions on behalf of their grandkids. You do have your annual exclusion gift, which I think is it 18,000? 18,000 for 2025. That doesn't have to be reported as a gift to the child for grandparent funding, either a 529 plan or giving them that money to help pay for college. And something maybe people don't know a lot about is if the grandparent writes a check directly to the college or the institution, there is no limit applied to that.
Unlimited.
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 So, if you got some grandparents that are having, a hole burned in their pocket,
Write the check to the university directly.
write it directly to the university, and they can help pay for that.
Absolutely.
And then obviously cash flow and budgeting. We talked about if you had the free cash flow to be able to do it, allocating a certain percentage of money that you can set aside to help fund that during those years that you have those expenses.
Got it.
And then importantly, the asset placement and the ownership of things. So, basically I think it comes down to, and correct me if I'm wrong here, but if the parent owns the asset versus the child owning the asset, when you go and fill out the FAFSA, it works out to the child's benefit if they don't own any of the assets.
Correct, which would be a parent strategy to make sure that most of the assets in their name are using life insurance, things that don't adversely affect the FAFSA.
Right.
So when we get to, in a minute, to child contributions, it's typically not going to be about them saving a ton of money, working, I guess, while they're in high school to get to ready for college, because that works against them on the FAFSA calculation.
Yep.
All right, super. So those are, and again, I think the way you guys went through those, we have clients that use 3 or 4 of those methods, right? Because there's just not one that's going to fully fund it. And that's okay because of the cost of college is so significant. So as we transition, yes, shared responsibility. You're giving a great gift to your child or grandchild, appreciation of money. What are those options relative to the child contribution? So Kraig, you tell me kind of what you coach your clients on in terms of what their kids, how they can step up to the plate and help in this process.
Sure. Yeah. So the first option is obviously get a job, whether that be during school or working more during the summer. We typically suggest, having some type of conversation back to around what the student's responsibility is. Maybe say, $3,000 to $5,000 a year. You can make that up through working. You can also do student loans. So the government automatically offers student loans for everyone. So we always suggest, even if you as the parent are going to pay off everything, at least making the student go through the process of going through and actually getting approved for those loans. You can go the Mark route and, not tell them that they're going to cover it and, make them sweat a little bit. But even if...
What's wrong with that?
Nothing at all. I like it. But we do always suggest going ahead and having them go through that process to get approved. Again, everybody is eligible for those government subsidized and unsubsidized loans. The third one, which is probably one of the most overlooked, is the amount of scholarships and grants out there. I know we were just talking about the Scholly app. There's all kinds of different apps and books out there. So many scholarships go unused every year, thousands of hundreds of thousands of dollars, probably even millions now, of just scholarships that don't get used because people just don't apply for them. So, working that in with the student responsibility, hey, you don't have to go and work. You can apply for these scholarships and that'll cover your portion of it, is definitely a good way to go as well. And then kind of back to the shared responsibility, establishing whatever percentage it is that you expect them to cover, so they kind of have a game plan and they can kind of go about it as they wish.
Yeah, and just to, if you wouldn't mind sharing, I think typically what we're seeing, that shared responsibility is somewhere in the neighborhood of 25 to 35%.
Yeah, about a quarter is usually around what we usually see with our clients.
Yeah. Okay, super. Excellent. So, Cody, I know, so we talked about, the traditional, kind of non-traditional parent sources, what the kids can do. There are some alternative things that probably don't get talked about enough in today's world. Why don't you share with us some of those? Yeah,
so I think the popular one certainly I see, and I know at least around this area they got the A+ program. Basically, essentially, you can get, if you qualify for it, you get your community college free.
Right.
And then after your 2 years, you can transfer to a 4-year institution. Or no matter what, just going to a community college, usually those first 2 years is going to lower your cost quite significantly.
Oh my God, substantially, right?
Right. Yeah. A lot of times, and it's just because the room and board sometimes costs more than the darn college.
Right.
So, and then there's tons of the colleges out there and programs that have military ROTC programs. That's overlooked a lot, and I know I got a good buddy who went through that, and he ended up becoming a doctor, and the military paid for everything for him. So he, did some service to the country, and got rewarded for that as well. So that's great things that are overlooked a lot. And what was the other one we had here? Mark, did I already go? Oh, trade schools.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's one I think that is probably becoming more and more popular, like as it should. There are tens of thousands of jobs right now that currently need to be filled in. I don't know about you, but if you got a small leak in your house, good luck for the person showing up, because there's just so many jobs out there that those are kind of overlooked. And we were just having the conversation, kind of thinking 10 to 15 years out, as AI evolves, and we've been through industrial revolutions and things like that, but there are going to be some jobs that are going to be pretty darn hard to replace with AI.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's no question. I mean, everybody has listened to our buddy Mike Rowe on TV, on all sorts of different outlets, the radio, the internet. A couple 100,000 trade jobs short today, and that's only going to get worse.
Yeah.
And I was sharing with you guys, a friend of my girls, college wasn't for him. He went to trade school, and 4 or 5 years later now, he's making just south of $100,000 a year as an electrician, and wants to own his own business. So there is a path that does not require to go through college. And I think one of the bad things that's happened in our society is that we're conditioned that is the only path. That's not the only path. And even if it's go to community college first, there's so many of these kids that they're chastised because they don't know the second they graduate from high school what they want to go do.
Right.
That's okay. And it's okay not to spend a ton of money going in to figure out that wherever you went, you really don't want to be there. You want to do something different. Go to community college for a couple of years. So great stuff. Again, we could talk about this for hours on end, but just kind of wanted our clients, whether they're parents or grandparents, their friends, their siblings who are going through this, you two who are going through this, just to get to some collective ideas, first about the shared responsibility, and then what parents can do, both traditionally and non-traditionally, and then what kids can do. So, Kraig, since you had that stream of consciousness on Roths, final thoughts.
Yeah, I'd say, the whole college experience can be kind of daunting, especially if you're just going at it the first time. So just know that there are lots of options out there. Obviously, we're always here to help with any questions you have, so don't hesitate reaching out. There's lots of options out there.
Cody, you had a consistent stream of consciousness. What are your final thoughts?
I try to. I think the thing that maybe resonated with me the most, something Kraig brought up, is the amount of grants and scholarships that go unused.
It's almost embarrassing.
Mark didn't say, but the whole point that this guy was able to start with the Scully.
The Scully app,
Scully app was because he got these grants that, it's not limited to how much your college is going to cost. And he took the extra money and had an app made with that.
Yeah, he funded
so people could, utilize this a little bit more. And there's, and the book out there on how to get these scholarships and what they're all out. I mean, it's a phone book for those of you that have seen a phone book before. It's like that thick of onion paper.
Right.
So there's tons of stuff out there. Having your kid research and put a little effort into it, I think, goes a long ways too. And like you said, having skin in the game, I think, is huge.
Right.
Because it makes that part of, hey, if I don't do this, it goes back on me too.
Right.
So, all that and above. There's just a lot out there.
And the sad part is so much of it goes unapplied for and unclaimed. And it's mostly because I don't want to be an old man bashing on the kid generation, but they don't want to take the time to put together a decent cover letter and a resume and send out 5 a week for 10 weeks. They'd be shocked the amount of money that comes back. The guy that started Scally funded it on his excess grants and scholarships that he was getting no matter what.
Right.
And it just takes a little effort. And again, that's why I think this shared responsibility is a wonderful approach. And you're doing your child or grandchild a phenomenal favor of getting them prepared to handle money and the right mindset when they graduate. So Gentlemen, I appreciate it. I'm going to get you a light bulb that sits right on the top of your head for the next one because I thought that was great. And I will remind everybody, because my friends at compliance want to make sure you know this, we're not CPAs. We have a great handle on how these various accounts are treated tax-wise, but we're not CPAs. Just remember that. But if you have any questions, your parent, grandparent, your friends, your siblings need to see this and hear about all these options and this approach to preparing for college and funding. Please give us a buzz, particularly Cody or Kraig. They're knee deep in doing it. They're building their plans as we speak. So if you want to saddle up next to somebody who's going through the same thought process and planning process, please. I'm about to complete it. So, getting kids off the family payroll is really a great thing for us to strive for. So please reach out, call, phone, email, or text line. Thanks for listening, and we'll touch base with you guys next month.